All right, so my name is Bryce Curtis, and I work for the IBM Software Group in Austin, Texas, and really been focusing on mobile and emerging internet technologies. I'll go over a little bit, I introduce the team, IBM, then kind of talk about what it is that we saw in PhoneGap and why we are using PhoneGap, and then a little bit more information about why IBM is interested in it, a few issues and things that we've seen both within IBM and with some of our customers, and then go from there. So the IBM team, David Bolliker, he's kind of the one that we all work for and report to. He's the CTO of Emerging Technologies. I've been leading the group plus working on the Android portion of it. Also helping out with Android is Simon McDonald, and you probably, if you've monitored any of the forums from PhoneGap, you see him pop up there quite a bit. He seems to be answering not only Android questions, but he gets in on the iPhone and BlackBerry as well. So he does a great job there. Becky, she is one of the original, I guess she and I were the ones that kind of started off about a year and a half ago or so on the mobile project, and she's working on iPhone. Pat Mueller, he just recently joined the PhoneGap team. He's been working in WebKit for quite a while and Web Inspector, so it was a great addition. He's working on iPhone as well. And then on BlackBerry is Drew Walters, and I don't know if he's fairly new to the group, 3 months. He took over Justin Tyberg's effort. Justin did a lot of the work on the WebWorks SDK implementation. So, just briefly, kind of, why is it that we kind of got involved in how we got here? First of all, the mobile landscape. I think we all know that this a huge interest, a huge uptake in mobile environment. Depending on who you talk to, what graphs you look at, it's somewhere in the next year to the next few years, more people are going to be accessing the internet from mobile devices than from actual desktops. So there's a huge opportunity, huge growth here. Mobile devices are different, though. They're always on, always connected. You really don't want to, you always want to be able to get to your information, get to your data. Collaboration is very important. However, there's a couple of different things that you have to be concerned with, particularly as a business, is dependent upon how you implement your mobile device, your mobile applications, your return on investments will be completely different. There's things that you have to be concerned with that you really didn't have to before. So for example, the application lifetime of enterprise applications in the past were, years, right? You would be using the same application. Now, for an application for business, it's around 3 months is about how long it lasts. And hard to believe, but the consumer apps seem to last about 3 days. A lot of them are just people just try it once and they never go back to it. So, a really big change in the way that applications are used and disposed of. Consumers, as we talk to them, they're really wanting rich mobile access across all their devices. So they're wanting to be able to get to, for example, Facebook. If you want to be able to get to it from your desktop, get to it from your various mobile devices. It's really more about branding, getting across, the same experience across multiple devices, rather than just getting it from one particular device. And so that kind of is wrapped up in, well, why is mobile different? A couple of key points here is that the average interaction time of a mobile device is around 20 seconds. So you turn it on, you check something real quick, you get that piece of information, and then you're done with it. Maybe because of that's all you needed, or because of interruptions, because it's always, you're using it kind of as you're going along in your daily activities. The other thing I think we all know, but it's something very important to keep in mind, is that the screen on a device is obviously smaller than what you're used to on a desktop. And so you have to really redesign your applications with that in mind. And so that's another key, very important point. And then, of course, if you talk to consumers, they still want everything that they get to and everything that they can do on their desktop on a mobile device. So kind of an unrealistic and difficult task, but that's what everybody is kind of shooting for. So we started back, and I don't know if you've been in or heard of previous stories of when IBM gets involved in a particular project. It's like, a lot of times 10 IBMers show up and there's like 2 or 3 people that we're meeting, and so it's sort of like you kind of get overwhelmed. So, a lot of the times when we first started off with PhoneGap, it was like, well, what is it that IBM is actually trying to do? What are they trying to get out of it? What are they contributing back? And so, I'm here to answer some of that, kind of let you know, what it is. IBM's really been focusing on community, open source in the past several years, and PhoneGap's just another, a technology that is very interesting in the mobile space for that. As I mentioned about 18 months ago, Becky and I, we began looking at, mobile applications for enterprise. And we looked at, how is it that we can tell our customers, tell our internal consumers how to write mobile applications? Because at the time, everybody was writing native applications. There was this new thing called web apps that were starting to get traction and discussion in the industry. A lot of contention there as far as, what was the best approach. And so, after looking into it, we decided hybrid applications, web application based was really the preferred choice that we saw. We began looking at several alternatives. I think if you talk to anyone in research, there's numerous ideas that have been kicked around for years. We've actually found out that there were 2 hybrid implementations that were going on in research, and so it comes down to, well, do you want to write your own, or do you want to work in a community, kind of buy versus build type discussion. So, we looked at that. Obviously, we decided community is where we really wanted to be. We wanted to work in open source, and so that's kind of what led us in that direction. Then we began looking at the other types of application frameworks that were out there for mobile. I imagine a lot of you have done the same thing, right? You've looked at Accelerator from Titanium. It was interesting. They actually started off as very similar to PhoneGap, but they ended up changing, like at 1.0 time frame, their complete programming model to more programmatic, JavaScript based. We also looked at some of the other ones, but we finally concluded that PhoneGap, and it's probably not a surprise to anyone here in the room here, but PhoneGap was really the technology, the best technology, and based on web standards is where we really wanted to go. So after years and years of web years of research, and we finally decided, and I guess the kind of the sad thing here is that probably several people on the IBM side in the room actually worked on these computers and probably know what they are. So obviously we decided to work with the PhoneGap community, and I think a lot of it was just the we talked. It was about a year ago that we actually met at OSCON with Andre and the rest of the PhoneGap team and from Natobi, and the vision that they had and the vision that we had kind of mapped out and we were looking to go take IBM really lined up well. And in particular, I mentioned the hybrid framework, writing everything using web technologies was key to that. Open source frameworks, very key, standards based, all things that we and IBM have been striving for in the mobile space. We're right along the same lines that we were thinking. And then it was interesting, it's kind of an interesting goal when you say that, well, part of my strategy is to become obsolete. But after you think about that, it really makes a lot of sense, right? If you're following standards, if you're following where the industry is going, you're just providing kind of the bridge or the gap in between where things are now and where things will be in the future. That makes a lot of sense. And in fact, as we explain that to both developers within IBM and some of our customers, they say, that's the right way to go. That makes that's definitely picks up a lot of traction there. So as far as IBM in open source, it's not new. We've been involved with open source for a long time. There's hundreds of projects that we've been contributing to. 150 plus, we can say 151 now with PhoneGap. We've been working in this community now for a while. So definitely nothing new. But there's a couple of important things I think to point out is that not only is there intellectual property that gets transferred, and I'll get more into why there are things like CLAs and some of those legal issues that at least IBM and some of the enterprise customers are really concerned with. There's patents as well, right? And so whenever IBM, IBM has a lot of patents. I think we're the #1 patent recipient and publishers in the world. But a lot of times we take those patents and give them to the communities so that it's free from IP issues and problems from other companies as well. So if we look at the different types of mobile application programming models, I think we've all kind of experienced this to some extent or another. We start off trying to develop a mobile application. We have all these choices of devices, operating systems, and languages to choose from. The problem is that as you write more and more applications across devices, you have to worry about not only learning the various languages, but the tools and everything else. And so the HTML5, basically the browser that's on these devices is really what's common between all these platforms. And so just like back years ago, if you think back to the desktop where you could write a Windows application versus a web app, in your browser, the same kind of thing and scenario is kind of playing out now in the mobile space. And of course, we made the bet years ago that the browser was the right choice. And again, we feel that mobile browser containers is the right choice to go. So the strategy is summarized by, I don't know if you're familiar with WebSphere. It's sort of our J2EE web server product. Extending our platform to mobile-based devices using open standards and technologies, targeting the broadest set of devices possible, basically technologies that our customers are used to and use. So, obviously that makes sense if you have web servers that you're selling or customers are using web servers. But then taking it a little further, and this is kind of how I view it, is that really we want to be able to provide not only the standards, but the tools that go with them to be able to enable developers and our product customers to develop applications using these technologies. And so, that's kind of where we're headed. When we first got started, the vision was great, but then there also needs to be execution on that vision. And so that was another very positive thing that we saw at PhoneGap at the time. You guys had done a great job, with the iPhone. There was BlackBerry and Android at the time. I think BlackBerry was 4.x. There wasn't any 5 or 6. And then Symbian. And since then, within the past year, a whole new slew of operating systems have been added. There's now work going on with the Windows Phone, the Beta, and then OS 5 and 6 as well. So, definitely a huge improvement. As far as architecture, we really like the architecture, and we saw great potential there. This is a chart that I show around as to kind of what the architecture currently looks like. It was sort of like this when we got started. It's changed a little bit. I think instead of plugins, there were modules. I think that's what they were called. We kind of formalized the plugin architecture a little bit more, and then every single particular function was a plugin. And the key, not only to IBM but to customers, is that it's extensible, right? That's really a very important aspect of it. So just by extending a particular plugin class, you can now write your own. You can get to the NCF or the NFC sensor now. Somebody started writing a plugin for that. There's several other plugins that just talking to different product groups, they have in mind as to what they'd like to write and then contribute back. So definitely very positive there. Something that we don't like to talk about, but has to come up whenever we do, is licensing for technology and for software. Different licenses really make a big difference as to what you can do with the technology. And PhoneGap was licensed as an MIT license, which IBM considers friendly, and I think a lot of the other enterprises do. I don't know if you've ever tried to work with lawyers, try to get approval for things, but you want to make it as easy and painless as you can, and even then it's pretty difficult. But at least we were able to get that through our legal system. GPL, that's kind of a bad word in legal circles for anything to do with technology, because it means that you really can't ship products without making your source code available back to the community. And if you're trying to make money off of a product, you don't really want to give away, here's my code, take it and do whatever you want with it. So our legal team has problems with that. But that's not new. There's a lot of the customers that we have in the enterprise space that really have the same kind of issues and guidelines. Also, IBM has the added kind of onus that many of our customers want indemnification from our products. So, for example, in the recent news was LoadSys started suing some Apple developers because while Apple may have had the rights to use some of their patents, they said that the developers that used Apple technology did not. And so, there's some issues there that I guess will still be decided. Interesting to see how that happens out, kind of plays out in the courts. But, those are things that you have companies with, I guess perceived deep pockets, that it's easy targets for people to think they can make some money off of that. And then community, the PhoneGap community has been great. They act, I guess they accepted IBM and the whole team, into the community. We, were able to contribute. We were able to, make changes, and actually a great opportunity there for building up PhoneGap and kind of making things consistent. When you look at what the charts that Andre showed as far as the downloads and the activity that you're seeing on the site, that doesn't just happen, right, with any technology. It really is a testament to how PhoneGap is put together and how beneficial it is to the various users that have been using it. And then, everywhere we go, talking within IBM, and then there have been several presentations that we've done at conferences recently, tremendous feedback from all those people as well. I think this is nothing new. Really a look back, the platforms that we started off with, were fairly ancient. Things have been changing quite a bit. We're all the way up to Android 3.0 and, Web OS 3 coming up, and BlackBerry 7 coming up soon as well. So, PhoneGap has done a good job of keeping up with the technology. Some of the initial goals when we first got started a year ago, consistent API, I think we've made huge strides there. Consistent support across devices, I know that's really coming along and doing well. There are good documentation, that's really improved a lot. I think when we first started it was a single page on the wiki, and now it's a really nice website, thanks to the Natobi guys for doing that. And then mobile spec, that was something that shouldn't be overlooked either. It was very good when we first started, built on QUnit and then from there. And that's something that enterprises really look for, being able to make sure that there's no degradation from release to release, and that things work as they're supposed to. So, that's just a snapshot of what the feature list used to look like, how it looks now. Some of these charts may be familiar, and then mobile spec as well. So what are some features and things that IBM developers are talking about? Well, barcode scanning is going to become real important here. As e-commerce goes more and more mobile, that's going to be critical to be able to do that. There's also in business process management circles and inventory and those kinds of things, being able to track with barcodes. Push notifications will be very important as well. It's kind of interesting that a lot of the technology that IBM has was developed well before a lot of the things that were done in mobile came about. And so as a result, we have several ways to do push notifications. We have all of our products use their own channel. They open their own connection. So that's something that's got to be fixed. And so looking for kind of a cross-platform unified way to do that is going to be key in the future. Emerging mobile standards and specs. Calendar API is the next one that's interesting. We've done in the past year quite a few of the W3C mobile specs, the contacts and capture APIs and those things. So that's coming along nicely. But there are always more standards coming out. And then remote loading. And I know this was something that was kind of new to when we first started talking with the Tobii folks about that. And I know there are issues, supposedly with Apple, whether or not they would allow this or not. But this is something that's really key to IBM and enterprise, particularly when you can have your own app store and you can distribute your own applications. This is key because it's still very similar to the way that they write mobile and web applications now, except now you could almost consider it like a PhoneGap browser, right, where you type in a URL and you can go to a web application, but it's been instrumented now and enabled with the PhoneGap API. So what this allows you to do is without having access to SDKs or compiling your code, any of these legal issues that really plague enterprise, you can now open up the applications to be written by any developer in the company. They don't have to have clearance for downloading the iPhone SDK or something like that. They can just write it in plain old HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And so this is, I think, very key in the near future here to be able to do that. There's tooling and debugging, very interesting aspects. Of course, Eclipse is key to that. IBM's version is called Rational Application Developer. It's based on Eclipse. Something that they're also very keen on is simulation without having your SDKs. And this kind of ties into being able to run and test your application without having to actually build it as part of a native distributable application. And then something that just came up recently is being able to have just one directory where you can have your HTML code, but yet still feed that into all of your builds for your other platforms. So looking really for being able to build across platforms, and it may have been solved in the build.phonegap.com, but that's something that is very important. Obviously, test plans and scenarios, having those so that we can verify that everything's working correctly. And then improved documentation. And actually, more like user manuals. There's been a lot of articles that are now being written. It's interesting, by IBMers getting excited about PhoneGap and putting them up on DeveloperWorks. So if you might want to check out DeveloperWorks sometime to actually see that. There was somebody who took and used Portal Factory, part of the Portal product, and wrote a tutorial that showed how to use that in order to include PhoneGap. Globalization, the globalization team at IBM, I think they're in research. They actually wrote a plugin for globalization for PhoneGap. They wrote an iPhone plugin that I think Becky already posted up on plugins or PhoneGap.plugins. They also gave us a couple weeks ago an Android plugin, and then BlackBerry just this past week. And so we tested all those out, and those will be going up there as well. So, things like, how you want to view date formats and those kinds of things, since all this isn't necessarily available directly from your browser. And it comes as no surprise, security is another big topic, right? Secure stores, being able to save information securely on your device so that others can't get to it. And even talks about being able to sandbox your applications for enterprise, kind of keeping them separate from your other applications that are on your phone, so that if there are issues, say they need to control or wipe a particular device or the data, they don't wipe your personal stuff, just the business side of things. And then PhoneGap's becoming more and more part of the bigger picture. IBM, it's becoming more of a component inside these larger thoughts. MEAP, Mobile Enterprise Application Platform, that's something that's really becoming important. There's several vendors out there that have solutions. Usually analytics are tied into that. There's device and application management that's very key to that, particularly when you're trying to manage a whole bunch of applications across the enterprise, and then being able to get into it, VPNs, are a requirement. And then, talking about customers, they started off using native application development. They quickly learned that, well, that works okay for one or two applications, but as soon as you get into either more applications or you have to, multiple versions of Android comes along or iPhone, you now have to be concerned with, this ever-increasing matrix of devices and OSs to support. What they ended up finding out was that this wasn't the way to go. They're coming over to, I guess you could say, the web and hybrid side of thinking about native applications. And what we've determined is that anywhere from 2 to 3 times the cost savings if they go from native to web development. And so they're very excited about that, get a lot of calls and a lot of talks about this with customers. And then finally, customers, they need to be able to get to their existing services, existing servers, and those kinds of things. And so what we've been telling them, if they implemented using SOA or some type of enterprise services, REST works great for that. I don't think is any surprise to anyone who's done any JavaScript programming. Using AJAX or XHR to get to those services is the way to go. And the nice thing here is that it's not only a mobile storage, but it's really a browser story, right? Being able to get to it from your desktop as well. So it works cross-board. Customers right now, they really are looking for end-to-end solutions. They're moving kind of cautiously because really it's security is their key issues that they have. A lot of customers are their banks or their credit card companies or whatever who really can't afford to have one lapse or one problem with security. So they're moving cautiously, and you can understand why. So it's our job to make sure that we convince them and we provide them the environment that they need to be able to provide secure solutions for their customers. And then it's interesting, some customers just want to use PhoneGap as kind of a wrapping of a web app so they can distribute it on the App Store. Others are actually trying to get around the Apple App Store requirements. So, depending upon who you talk to, what their motivation is, it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't have a clock here. I don't know how long I've been going. I've got enough time?
Yeah. How much time?
About another 10 minutes. Okay, 5. All right. Yeah, I left my watch at home and the battery went out on it, and no use walking around with a watch that doesn't work. So, native versus web, that's an ongoing discussion. Depending upon who you talk to, they fall on one side or the other. Obviously, we feel that the web is the right approach. This is a chart that I use to kind of describe why it is we're doing PhoneGap, why we're doing the hybrid model. Really what we're doing is we're kind of picking the best, you could say, from both the web and the native application development models, and really coming up with an answer that addresses those quite well. And you basically you overcome a lot of the problems that the web has with extensibility and of course running native capabilities, but yet you make it easy to develop. Legal issues, I'll briefly touch on this, and I think I'll remember the quote depending upon what the definition of is, right? Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it plays out in a lot of the conversations I've had with the legal team. You have MIT, BSD, and Apache licenses, which are really open licenses that allow you to do quite a bit with those. You can pretty well take the code and do whatever you want. Then there's GPL and LGPL, which are left copy licenses. Basically, it means that if you make changes to it, you have to put them back in the community and make your source code available. The lawyers don't like that. So usually if there's a license, a technology with GPL in it, that's pretty well a no-go from the start. The CLA, I know this is something that I think we talked about probably about 8 or 9 months ago. Now everyone that contributes to PhoneGap has to sign one. This isn't to make it hard for the developers or the contributors, but it's really more to protect those who are using PhoneGap, right? So it protects the community from legal issues that may arise from people who think that they own the rights to the code versus contributing it. So that's the real reason that there's a CLA, and anything contributed, anyone has to sign that so that they can verify that they're the author of that code. I don't know if you remember back in January, there was this one, I think it was for Jason, there was this one part of the license that read this software should be used for good and not evil. Well, to me that's like, okay, no problem, but we're not going to use it for evil. And I guess that's subjective, but the lawyers didn't like that. They said, well, depending on who you are, you could construe that as, well, this is evil or not, right? So we ended up having to rewrite JSON because of that. So this is just the kind of things that you have to worry about, particular enterprise. And I know that a lot of, I don't know in the room here, but a lot of PhoneGap developers are pretty small, shops, and so they may not be aware of a lot of these things. Again, the iPhone SDK license agreements, there's issues in there. Because of that, we've segmented the team and really all development teams in IBM. Those that can work on iPhone and those that can't. And pretty well, if you're an iPhone, you can take stuff that has been written for other devices and port them over, but we can't take stuff from iPhone and port them to like Android or BlackBerry, because you may have inadvertently, put something in there that we're not supposed to know from, proprietary information from an SDK or something like that that Apple has given you access to that they don't want other people to know about. So, kind of some interesting aspects there. One thing that I'll just briefly mention as far as the being able to simulate things kind of without having the development environment in place is there's a PhoneGap SimJS project that it's in my repository up on GitHub that actually lets you develop applications without having an SDK available in your browser. And so right now it does some simulation of some of the sensors and those things. And the thought is that if this works well enough, then this may be a good way for developers to actually write applications and test them out without having to get dirty with the SDKs. So, all right, that's everything I have. Any questions? Okay. All right. Thanks very much.